Welcome to the Sprouting Photographer Podcast. Proven strategies, interviews, and insights that help professional photographers with the business of being creative. Here's your host, Brian Caparici.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Brian Caparici, and welcome to episode number 77 of the Sprouting Photographer Podcast. Today's episode is a little different. I'm here in Florida on family vacation. We got an email just the other day, and I wanted to share with you a big announcement. Now, let me quickly pretense this with telling you, congratulations, you are actually part of something really big just by listening to this episode. So hang on for 5 minutes. I'm going to share a few details, and at the end, I'm going to share the announcement. There's no shortage of education today. You can go to many different mediums and platforms to learn how to grow as a photographer and entrepreneur. Thank you again for spending your time here with us on the podcast. I've talked many times before on SproutingPhotographer.com about educational opportunities for photographers, but here's one educational platform that I'm obviously passionate about: podcasting. According to an Edison research study in 2014, there are over 39 million Americans that listen to podcasts monthly. That's huge. Of those, podcasts take up 25% of their ear share, meaning that a quarter of their time listening to any kind of audio is spent listening to a podcast. That's tied with AM/FM radio. The future is changing, and podcasts have become more commonplace as a form of education. There's a reason that Apple now includes the podcast app by default on every iPhone, iPad, and iPod, as well as on every installation of iOS 8. It's the same reason that car manufacturers are now connecting their cars to the internet and are including the ability to listen to podcasts natively in car. The reason? Podcasts are huge. Want more data? In 2013, Apple announced that podcast subscriptions reached 1 billion in around 225,000 shows. And that number has tripled in the last 5 years. That's huge growth.
Yes.
Another interesting metric to show that podcasting has reached a high commercial status, here is a list of the average CPM rate that marketers will pay on the varying advertising mediums. Podcasting, $20 to $45. Radio, $1 to $8. TV, $5 to $20. And the web, $1 to $20. So podcasts are actually seen as the highest value to advertisers who want to market their message. All that being said, let's just say that podcasting is huge. Many are saying that we're in the resurgence of podcasting, and we're excited to be a part of it. Our podcast, the one you're listening to right now, the Business of Photography podcast, features weekly interviews and discussions about specific, actionable business fundamentals for photographers. We talk about topics like sales, pricing, marketing, branding, customer experience, mindset, and so on. We publish 2 podcasts weekly on Tuesday and Wednesday, and every other week we publish our Weekend Wisdom with Skip Cohen episode on Saturday. Ready for the big announcement? We're honored and privileged to announce that Apple has featured us in the Best of iTunes 2014. Of all of the 225,000 plus podcasts in iTunes, we were featured to be one of the best. In this list, there are podcasts from every category, but there's only 3 business podcasts, and we're one of those 3. And we're the only photography podcast to make the Best of iTunes 2014. To give a bit of context into our fellow Best of iTunes 2014 recipients, the other 2 business podcasts are The Tim Ferriss Show and Startup. Tim Ferriss is a world-renowned entrepreneur, author, and investor whose net worth is $20 million. Startup is run by Alex Blumberg from This American Life, and his startup, for which his podcast is showing the behind the scenes of, just recently secured investments with a valuation of $10 million. The other podcasts on the list include The Adam Carolla Show, TED Talks, several shows from CBC Radio, and others. We're thrilled to be in this company. So, What does this mean for you? Well, first of all, thank you for the podcast. Thank you for your support. You're part of something big here. And not only are you enjoying the audio and the podcast and the education and the interviews that we have here in the podcast, but what you're contributing to is now being recognized by companies like Apple. And like I said, we were the only recognized by Apple. We're currently getting over 30,000 downloads monthly, and we're growing at a rapid pace. We do this all for you, and while the recognition from Apple is a welcome surprise, the real award is the changes that we're helping you make in your photography business. We'd also like to send a huge thank you to our past and upcoming guests on the podcast. I used to list them whenever I would talk about our podcast, but now there's way too many to list, and we're now on episode number 77. We've pretty much had everyone who's anyone on the show, and we have a lot more great guests planned for you. Thank you, everyone, for your support. Now, if you've been listening all along to our podcast, thank you again. And if you're new and you haven't listened to the full podcast yet, or many of the past episodes, welcome, and we would love it if you'd go back and listen to some of our episodes. Now, the only thing that we ask for you in return for everything that we've done on the podcast, the interviews, the time, and everything that we do here is two things. Number one, we would love it if you would subscribe in iTunes. And number two, if you're enjoying the podcast, we would love it if you would leave us an honest review and rating in iTunes. Now you can do both subscribe and rate and review by going to www.sproutingphotographer.com/iTunes. And that's all that we have for today's episode. I wanted just to keep this episode really special, really quick, really brief. I wanted to share this announcement with you. You're part of something really, really big here. And from the bottom of our hearts here at Sprouting Photographer, thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for the ratings and reviews in iTunes. And we're looking forward to continuing to bring you amazing content and great interviews here on the Sprouting Photographer podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sprouting Photographer podcast. Visit us online at www.sproutingphotographer.com to discover articles, tools, and insights all about the business of being creative.
I'm done. Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Come on, Jake. Come on.
And then press repeat to hear it. Body shot. Which one does not belong? A. W. Cartoon. Press the note keys to compose a melody and see you later.
Tell them what's coming up next. Next, Abby's flying fairy.
Take a shower to get